I'm going to listen to Chrétien's speech, our former Liberal Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Trudeau, President of the party,
Ministres, députés,
ministers and MPs,
chers
good evening. An exceptional opportunity for me to be here this evening.
Il s'agit
This is my
convention du parti à laquelle
ninth
je
Liberal
participe.
convention that I participated in,
Et c'est la 7e fois.
and it's the seventh time that I've spoken at the podium.
Je n'aurais jamais cru
I
que
would
je
have never
pourrais le
thought
faire
that I could
à
do it
l'âge de 91 ans.
at 91.
Et toujours prêt à me battre.
I'm still ready to fight. I have fight in me yet.
It's great to see so many young people in the room today. It reminds me of my first Liberal convention when I was the president of the Young Liberals at Laval University. In 1958, when Lester Pearson was elected Liberal leader. In 1958, not many of you were born, and he then became a very good Prime Minister. I have kept coming to Liberal Convention for 68 years. I have kept coming back to Liberal Convention because of what the Liberal Party stands for. I have kept coming back because of what the Liberal Party has delivered to make the lives of Canadians better. And I am here today because it is the Liberal Party that can best deliver better lives for Canadians in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead.
What he's talking about is like enriching people's lives, but like Chrétien had a hand in literally attempting to diminish Indigenous rights in the Canada Constitution. Canada has not ever ended those ongoing colonial practices, and really, despite like his mentions of what the Liberal Party stands for, day-to-day reality really lacks any type of clear material expression of that. A lack of clean water on many Indigenous reserves to this day. So that really highlights there's still a lot of significant injustices that remain unaddressed that they shouldn't be taking any type of victory lap over.
It is the Liberal Party that has given Canadians the Canadian Pension Plan and Medicare. The Charter of Rights and Freedom, the two official languages that put the Indigenous rights into the Canadian Constitution.
You literally, to give a little bit of background, Canada did put Indigenous rights into the Canada Constitution. They've had to fight to this day to find out what that is actually defined as, Section 35. But this is also ironic because Jean Chrétien, when he was the Indigenous Affairs Minister under Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, they tried to bring in what was called the White Paper, which was essentially trying to just erase Indigenous sovereignty completely. So it's very ironic that he would try to claim that as like some type of righteous victory for the Liberal Party when he himself literally tried to diminish Indigenous rights.
Brought in tough gun control laws, affirmative action. We have always supported women's right to choose. We are the party who led the way, the second party in the country in the world is to permit same-sex marriage. The party of diversity, equality, tolerance, openness, inclusiveness. We Liberals call it the very essence of Canada.
Like, a lot of what he's saying is significant, but he's completely sidestepping areas like universal health care, which completely still falls short, pharmacare, completely reprehensible, dental care, mental health, all of these things. Any type of genuine equity that he's referring to would require comprehensive public funded supports that go beyond any of the current patchwork system that the Liberals have set up. And then the other thing is obviously legalizing same-sex marriage is critical. There is still such deep systemic discrimination against LGBTQ individuals that has persisted in the employment sector and healthcare access and housing, et cetera, et cetera. So again, yeah, he should probably not take a victory lap on that.
And it is the Liberal Party that gave us the red maple leaf flag. 60 years ago, which flew so proudly in homes across the country on the 14th of February to demonstrate our patriotism and love for Canada. I want to say a special thank you to former Prime Ministers Joe Clark, Harper, Martin, Campbell for coming together with me to rally Canadians across the land to show the Canadian flag with pride, with a lot of pride. But tonight, I want to tribute to Justin Trudeau. I want to pay tribute to him for taking the Liberal Party from third place to government. 3 successive election victories. I want to pay tribute to what he and his team have accomplished. Canadian Child Benefit to reduce the poverty for the children in Canada. The $10 child care opened the labor market to so many women. For the dental plan for low-income Canadians. For all the work is done on the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, these are liberal policies. And let's talk about the economic reality of the moment now. Because Canada has done well. This, I'm telling you, as I've said so many times, Canada is not broken. Despite the attacks by the critics, Canada has the lowest deficit per capita in the G7, more than 5 times lower than in the United States. For the lowest debt per capita in the G7. And in fact,
it's so funny to be like celebrating austerity, prioritizing balanced budgets really helps overshadow any type of very much needed investment in social programs. You could very much argue that a strong economy would be one that would outwardly address inequality, ensure robust public service, no matter the cost. Balancing the budget alone does not guarantee fair wages, affordable housing, or other progressive goals. It's like you're just celebrating austerity, which I mean is on brand for Carney and the new Liberals, but it's just, yeah, it's funny.
Payment on the interest of the debt today is only 11% for each dollar of tax we pay, and compared to what we got when we formed the government in 1993, we were obliged to pay 35 cents in every tax dollar. That was a little problem the Tories left to me. And we balanced the books. We took that mess from the Tories and we balanced the books. And we had 10 years of surplus. And the Tories came back to power and we went back in debt. Now inflation is 1.9% in Canada. It's 3.2% and increasing south of the border. I spend my life talking about job creation. The problem, we're looking for manpower. It's a difficult problem, but it's better than the reverse. I want to pay tribute to the government, to Mr. Trudeau, and to all the provincial governments for the fact that they have been with the municipalities to put together the best program on the pandemic that we face, better than any other country in the world. Our death rate was less than half of the United States. Today, as a party, we're choosing a new leader. A leader who will assume the mantle of Laurier and King, Saint Laurent and Pearson, Trudeau's father, Trudeau the son, who has with him a very beautiful daughter. You know, I'm old enough to say that. And myself.
Yikes, bro. That was a heavy yikes.
I want to take this moment to say how impressed I am by the quality of the candidates whose names are on the ballot tonight. It makes me very proud to be a Liberal. Et maintenant, parlons.
And now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the long and fruitful friendship with the Americans built over decades, which is falling apart before our eyes and is becoming something which is difficult to name. Mutual respect, trust, reciprocal cooperation, friendship, which have long characterized our relationship, are now giving way to weariness and more and more open hostility from the Trump administration towards our country. This is something we've never seen, but this is something that Canadians don't understand, and I think the majority of Americans don't understand it either, without mentioning the rest of the planet. Why historians, journalists, and university researchers and experts in international politics are trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. In Canada, our elbows are up. We're working together to unite, to deal with this threat, the threat to our economy and our sovereignty. In other words, our very existence as a country. At the beginning, the week, tariffs became a reality, and there will only be losers if you measure it in financial terms alone. But for Canadians, it's more than that. It's more than money that's at stake here. We love our country and our independence. We love who we are because we're unique in the world.
And I want to pay tribute to the Trudeau government and all the premiers for the way they have led Canada in the last few weeks in confronting the menace imposed on us.
I think that defending national sovereignty is very important, but you're also very much glossing over domestic divisions like systemic racism, the ongoing colonial project that is Canada as a whole, and all of the regional disparities that go with that. The elbows up solidarity against external threats should go hand in hand with openly confronting Canada's internal inequalities as well. And if it doesn't, it's just, again, virtue signaling.
With tariff completely unjustified, governments have absolutely retaliated as they have, and I congratulate all of them if it is necessary. The governments altogether can consider going further, anything the Americans where it really hurts, by imposing an export tax on oil, gas, potash, steel, aluminum, and electricity. We'll use that money to build infrastructure that are needed in Canada. For example, to build a pipeline for natural gas from Alberta to Quebec. Alberta, the family of my mother, and Quebec of my father. I think that if we do it, that will keep the steel workers working in Canada for a long time. And I could go on, but I'm limited in time. The world has lived for 80 years with a rule-based order that has brought us peace and prosperity. It has enabled the United States to be the strongest, the most powerful country in the world. It has allowed all of us to sleep well every night. And now Donald Trump has decided to throw it all out the window. We are going to be living very difficult time, but I'm very confident that the next Prime Minister will work with the premiers, the leaders of all the political parties in the House of Commons, and allies around the world to stand together to meet the challenges that Mr. Trump is creating for the whole world. And perhaps, speaking of the President, it is time for a little history lesson for him. Probably does not realize that in 1776, Benjamin Franklin spent a year in Montreal trying to convince the people to join the American Revolution. And he was told by the Francophone, non merci. And they were right. Look what happened to the French language in Louisiana.
See, this is some Quebec, paying homage to the Quebec Power Coalition that still remains a core piece of the Liberal Party to this day.
The Loyalists left the USA to come back to Upper Canada and the Atlantic. And the Francophone and Lower Canada, together they built our independent country. During the War of 1812, Americans came to what is known Canada on a mission of conquest. They were defeated by Colonel de Salaberry in what is now Quebec, and by leaders like the great Indigenous chief Tecumseh in what is now Ontario. And I don't know, apparently some burned the White House at that time.
We also betrayed Tecumseh and had him killed, essentially. Yeah. So, again, taking a dab in on something that, we didn't get the best luck out of.
But I'm too old to do it. Oh, it's a joke. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have been friends and good neighbor with our southern neighbors. But we must stand up for ourselves. Historically, despite our friendship, we have had problems, but we always found a way to solve them. We have worked with and collaborated with the United States in the past, and I'm telling you, we will do so in the future. We are good neighbors and friends. We are good neighbors and friends, but we are proud and independent country. But sometimes one must stand up for Canada. We must always be vigilant. And I did so as minister and as prime minister. Way back in 1968, when the Americans sent a ship, the Manhattan, with no Canadian flag through our Northern Passage, they wanted to prove that the passage was international water. As Minister of Northern Affairs, I flew to Pond Inlet at the northern extremity of
Canada is a major oil producing company.
Thank you.
I was on the Louis Saint-Laurent icebreaker. I called the captain. I said I will be there in an hour, and it's better to have the Canadian flag at the mast. When I arrived, there was the Canadian flag at the mast. And I had a big smile. We had other problems of the same nature. You remember Newfoundland, the so-called fish war, when we arrested Este? When my friend Tobin made a great show at the UN with the illegal nets, and we were successful. They changed the international laws after that because there was a problem that needed to be fixed. And I'm quite proud of it, and it was quite a time. Yeah. I was traveling in the West. I came back. It was Holy Week, so it was a Thursday, Holy Week. So my wife said, we'll have a good rest for the weekend. And I said, perhaps not, because I'm declaring war to Spain on She did not sleep. But we had another problem on the West Coast. We have Vancouver Island, the mainland, and Canadian waters. And the fishermen from Oregon and Washington State were going to Alaska, but they were not respecting our water. So we threatened them to block the passage on Canadian water and force them to go in the high seas. It was a very difficult problem. The senator of Alaska said it was almost a question of war. So I discussed that, and I talked with my friend Bill Clinton, and he said, it's out of Canada, there's not much I can do. I said, if you cannot do something, I will do something. And they were forced to respect our laws. Some were taken to courts, and after that, the problem was solved because we stood for us strongly. For 8 years, I was a colleague of Bill Clinton, and he would always say that Canada was his best ally, and that I was a very good friend, and we still are very good friends. But we worked together, and we found solutions together. And it's what happened in the future, too. We always been good neighbors with anybody. I was proud, too, when I was Prime Minister, and I had to say no to the participation in the American invasion of Iraq.
I mean, it's just simply not true. Canada did participate. It obviously was very complex and nuanced, but we definitely did participate in the invasion of Iraq.
I was proud too when I was Prime Minister, and I had to say no to the participation in the American invasion of Iraq.
Okay, so again, to be honest, that's not essentially true, what he's saying here. Canada's involvement in the U.S., in the U.S.'s invasion of Iraq, is many times framed as this principled stand against an illegal war, so much so that he's getting a standing ovation here. But Jean Chrétien, though he officially declined to participate, this decision is very much mythologized as an act of Canadian moral superiority, which is basically just a demonstration of of independence from American imperialism. But the reality is not at all of that sort. Canada may not have put its name on the invasion, but it played a crucial role supporting the entire military operation. It provided military logistics, economic assistance, all while pretending to stay out of the conflict. On March 17th, 2003, Chrétien announced that Canada would not send combat troops to Iraq without UN authorization. This was nothing but a savvy political move. It was designed to appease both domestic anti-war sentiment and his international allies, but very much behind the scenes, Canada was still deeply involved in the ways that helped sustain the war effort. And Canada naval forces in the Persian Gulf, under the guise of this anti-terrorist operation, provided logistical and intelligence support for the U.S. military. It was these ships that participated in various maritime efforts, essentially blocking Iraqi ships, which helped to enforce the economic strangulation of the country. Canada naval vessels also acted as a forward base for U.S. air raids, functionally integrating into the invasion effort without being labeled as part of it. Canadian pilots flew AWACS, surveillance missions that directly assisted U.S. airplanes in targeting Iraq. Throughout NORAD, Canadian military officers helped coordinate American airstrikes, ensuring that the bombing campaign ran smoothly. Additionally, about 150 Canadian troops were embedded within the U.S. and British forces under various exchange programs. Some of these personnel participated in direct combat, meaning that Canada did have boots on the ground in Iraq, just not under its own flag. Canada's government played a careful balancing act, which was officially opposing the war while maintaining warm diplomatic ties with the U.S. and the U.K. Many diplomatic officials made it clear to Washington that Canada would support the invasion on the margins, just enough to stay in America's good graces without incurring domestic political backlash. This wasn't a rejection of imperialism, as it was a PR strategy. And meanwhile, Canadian corporations quietly profited off this war. Defense contractors supplied ammunition and equipment used by the coalition forces, reaping financial rewards from the occupation. And the Canadian government didn't just tolerate it, it facilitated it. So the myth of Canada's moral stance on the invasion of Iraq remains one that is of great national illusion. It's a comforting narrative that ignores the country's actual role. Canada didn't stand against this war, it just avoided the political cost of its participation, and it helped sustain the invasion while pretending to be a simple bystander. The real legacy of Canada's Iraq war policy wasn't anti-imperialism, it was a cowardice, duplicity, and a deep commitment to maintaining its place within American-led global order, no matter how many lives it had cost. So that's the lies of the Iraq war that, again, not a touchdown dance that Jean Chrétien should be making here.
That decision told the United States and the world that Canada is a proud, independent country. Of course, the business community was very nervous. They were afraid of retaliation. So I told them, okay, give me the list of all the goods and all the services that the Americans are buying from us because they like us. I've not received the list yet. We will work in collaboration with them, but they have to understand, and everybody understand, that we are a very proud country. For me, I can tell you that sometimes I can say this, from one old guy to another old guy: stop this nonsense. Canada will never join the United States. I can tell you that my parents were not millionaires from New York. They were workers from Shawinigan. But my mother taught us good manners. She would have been ashamed of me if I had treated anyone the way that the president treated my prime minister and the president in Ukraine in the last few weeks.
Is being polite really an excuse for sending billions more dollars for thousands of people to be killed? Is it really chalked up to something that should be as simple as politeness? I don't know if that's something you could chalk up as simple as politeness.
The reason we don't want to become American is because our values as Canadians. We are proud Canadians, and yes, we owe a debt of recognition to Mr. Trump. He has united us as never before. So I want to say thank you to him, and I think I will propose him for the order of Canada. I'm just kidding. Mesdames et messieurs, Quand j'étais Premier ministre et que j'allais partout,
I would travel across the world. I went to the UN, to the G7, to NATO, to the Commonwealth, to the Francophonie, to all sorts of international meetings on the 5 continents. When I came back to Canada, each time I would say that the job of being Prime Minister is perhaps the easiest of any country in the world. Canada is the country that works the best, I think. Much better than any other country in the world.
And it's why there are millions and millions of human beings from all over the world who would like to come and become Canadian citizens. There was a survey not long ago. They were asking the people, where will you want to go if you had to start again your life? And Canada was number 1.
So much of that is chalked up to all of the stolen land that we have, that we've extrapolated from Indigenous peoples. Canada has a very decent reputation on a global stage. It's definitely diminishing. To say that we're in no way the best, it really masks a lot of the ongoing social gaps in social inequality. Many immigrants and refugees face systemic barriers once they arrive. We have this image, we present this welcoming image of Canada, but it really lacks any type of genuine economic, social, or political support for newcomers. We're just really extracting them for their labor. It is a long neglected aspect of their policy that before Trudeau stepped down, it was really the reason that they were falling short, to be completely honest.
Why? It is because Canada is the land of freedom. Canada is the land of opportunity, the land of generosity, the land of tolerance, the land of stability, the land of rule of law. It is our land that is the envy of the world. Canada will continue to rise through north strong and free. Nobody will starve us into submission, because Canada is and will remain the best country in the world. Vive le Canada!
For these people to have pride in country and pride in Canada is very much understandable, but calling Canada the best is very much obscuring a heck of a lot of ongoing crises that Canada is stricken by. Housing, poverty in marginalized communities, deep environmental degradation. True leadership would be having a self-examination of this, not having this complacency based on idealized national self-image of us as the best. I feel like this speech really highlights the framing of what is a lot of positive achievements, such as Medicare and bilingualism and women's rights, yet it absolutely does not address any of the unresolved inequalities and contradictions that are currently plaguing Canada. Mr. Chrétien focuses on balanced budgets, national unity, and a celebratory tone towards these social milestones that really risks addressing any urgent issues that Canada is facing. The point that he made about Indigenous rights was just so righteous, considering that he tried to bring in the white paper, which would have heavily diminished Indigenous rights in the 1960s. Section 35 is still deeply undefined, and it's like the priority for the government to figure that out is as low as it's ever been currently, especially in the face of this new type of protectionism. Like, no one is really caring about Indigenous sovereignty in the face of Donald Trump. And then he talked about healthcare. Healthcare needs deep expansion. Pharmacare, mental health care, dental coverage. We are lacking so deeply in this. It is not something that we should be having a touchdown dance about. Climate action. Obviously, we need to be far more aggressive and consistent, and it should not be overshadowed by pipelines and things like that. Obviously, domestic systemic issues, race, class, gender, and regional demands for deeper, more effective material policies than anything that has been offered for as long as Trudeau has been in office. Well, Mr. Chrétien's speech is very effective. It conveys pride in the Liberal Party's legacy and Canada's global reputation. It lacks the systemic vision that would be needed to tackle the deeply rooted social, economic, and environmental injustices that Canadians face today. So, yeah, not my favorite speech from the old guy.